Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the ScaleupStream podcast. I'm your host, Hugh Seth, and our guest investor today is very product driven. In the span of 5 years, he scaled 7 end-to-end enterprise SaaS and mobile products to $100 million revenue. Joining us is Suresh Krishna, co-founder and partner at Product 10X. We discuss his approach to helping startups, the importance of product-led growth, and his investment thesis. Hope you enjoy. All right, Suresh, let's start off with your most recent LinkedIn post, which reads product led growth equals product only growth. While driving PLG, founders must be aware that product is super important, but sales and marketing matter too. End quote. What inspired this post, Suresh?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for the opportunity on this one. So, the typically when we think about today, when we talk about the SaaS and product-led growth, everybody just sort of take it for granted. Yes, everybody is SaaS and product-led growth, but when we really take a step back, go 20, 30 years back, the most of the sales that are happening are really kind of an enterprise sales, long sales cycles, and you need to really explain the value of the product to your audience, whoever that is, whether it is at this point of time, what we call as the bottom up sales, versus in the past, it has been a lot top down sales where your CIO, CEO, whoever those influencers are, they would buy the software and then everybody have to use it. No matter what, I like it, I don't like it, doesn't really matter, just go use it. But then I think with the introduction of SaaS, the power definitely has shifted to the people who are using it. And now the people are really demanding as to say, give me the right set of tools, right? And that makes me productive, that makes me happy, and I don't want to use any crappy tools. So what does that mean? That means some of the tools that we use today, like Asana, Slack, just for us to really think through, or Calendly. It's not that we need somebody to really come in, sell you the value of, let's say, Calendly. No, you would know that, hey, I need to better manage my calendar. So you would just go directly sign up, use Calendly. That's it, right? So you don't necessarily need to have a inbound salesperson or a field salesperson come to your place and explain the value of Calendly. So when you really think about it, the whole of the product led growth is that whole angle for us to say we need to build the product to the right value set so that the users who are there can bring in the value without really needing for explanation videos or salespeople or customer success people and all that. So that's really where what we are talking about. My post is all about saying a lot of founders these days, they think, oh, I'm doing a great product. That means I don't need to really focus on sales and marketing. That is actually not true at all. That's a very huge misconception, saying that just because you are focusing on a great product, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need sales. So that's really where I highly advise everyone to say, while we are really building a great product, of course, we need to build in right onboarding features. We need to make sure that people come in, they try out the product, and then if they like it, they should have the path to really get to the next level. And honestly, I think HubSpot has done amazingly well in making sure that people come on, start free, and then when you go into the product and then you want to do something else, they're like, oh, you know, to upgrade to pro, and then only you can use some of these features, right? So that's really where you need to understand the product led growth is not just about saying you will build a great product and then stop there, but you also need to make sure with your, whether it is inside sales teams or the customer success teams, you need to make sure that right value is actually also brought out to the right set of users.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point, Suresh. If you can have the most amazing product, But if nobody knows that you even exist, I mean, you're not helping anyone, right? So that marketing aspect is very important. And also, if there are no sales being made, then that means there's no money coming in. Therefore, that company is bound to fail sooner or later. So now, okay, that's really good there. When you're talking about product focus, how can how does a startup go about delivering a really solid product? Is there an equation to this thing? Is it guesswork? What's up with that?
That's a great question, Hugh. I'll tell you, I think there is no one size fits all. The reason being, again, as Product 10X Accelerator, we have worked with hundreds of startups at this point of time. We have evaluated them, and many fall under different categories, if I can say that, right? One category is where the founders really had this big vision. They absolutely want to make sure they reach that vision, and they want to hustle. They just want to do anything to make that happen, right?
Right.
So in those cases, typically the founders have an idea in the mind, and then they create some sort of a crappy, scrappy product, and then they go to the market, and they're really looking for, okay, does it fit? And because they are really selling the vision and the mission, most of the times they get that initial set of early adopters get into the product, they give the feedback, and then the founders really iterate on the top of what they have, and they reach closer to what the mission is. That's one category of startups that we see. The second category is where we say, I have a technology vision, I can do things, and I will make something cool. Let me see where that fits in, right? So this is typically what we call as a great solution trying to find a problem, right? And this is the hardest part, I would say, for many founders, because at the end of the day, what happens is you create a product, and now you're trying to sort of really find where that fit is for you. And many times, if the founder is really committed enough, they will eventually find something. But in this case, most likely, we have seen in very few cases, founders are able to find that product market fit. And a lot of them, they actually sort of fall under the sort of bad influence, and then they just sort of don't really make even the second year of the startup, because they go to all these customers, all these users, and then they get turned down again and again, and they eventually lose that interest to continue further. And this is really where we absolutely see, when we want to look for founders, we look for three specific things. One, the mission and vision of the startup and the idea. That's super important. The second one is the people the founders are really bringing together, because at the end of the day, when it is about the investors, or even about the users or the enterprises, when they go to the B2B space, you are really investing in people, right? Because at the end of the day, even if one particular idea don't work out, but the people will eventually make other things work out. So that's really where it's really important to have that team, right team. The last thing is really about learnability, right? So the rest of the skills, I'm sure, I mean, where for founders, when you have the right advisors or the team, you can complement. But then the learnability and adaptability is one aspect where we absolutely feel is the crucial part in a founder, because there will be good times, there will be bad times, and then you need to pivot multiple times. And it is super important for the founders to really have that big vision, and the ability for you to be learning throughout the journey, and whenever it is needed, pivot in the direction and still get close to your mission.
All right, so Suresh, in the span of 5 years, you scaled seven end-to-end enterprise SaaS and mobile products to $100 million revenue and oversaw three acquisitions. What did this experience teach you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely. So the first things first, I think, especially when we talk about the acquisitions, we are really talking about value exchange. That's really what it is, right? Because any company, when we really look at it, we are executing one product and you are executing one particular theme of whatever your startup is or your company is. And then you realize again and again that, oh, yeah, there are other startups that are in the adjacent space or in the white space that they are doing really well. And now it comes to a point where is it better for me to completely redo that particular idea, functionality, and the product within your own company? Or do you want to acquire the technology and the customers and the thought process behind these products right into your company? So that's really where I'm sure a lot of companies go through, especially during their M&A process. And I was super lucky to be there on the buyer side of the equation as well as the seller side of the equation. And I'll say this: I think both the experiences are super a huge learning process for me as well. Because at the end of the day, we need to really look for, when I am selling my company, it's really all about, are we going into the right company, the right culture, and are we able to sort of execute our roadmap once we get into the bigger company? And that's super important for us. And then luckily, in both of the acquisitions that I was part of, we were always able to maximize our sales, because both of the companies are enterprise companies, and then they had a huge sales channels, and that really helped our startups at that point of time, right? And then on the buyer side of the equation, when I was there, it was really about, hey, do we buy or build? That was really the question that I had to ask myself. And based on that, if I have to build something on my own, it might take the next 2 years and whatever X amount of dollars that is. And then if I acquire this company, I will get, again, the IP, the product, the customers, and then that will give me the opportunity to sort of cross sell, upsell to these customers that are coming in to the organization. So that's really where I would say sometimes, even for the startups, they don't really think of it that way. But one thing that we keep also looking for our own startups is, as part of our product and X portfolio, where are those opportunities for us to buy smaller companies? Even though you are a startup, we don't need to think of it as a way, oh, I can't really buy other startups, right? That's definitely not true. So you should always be looking out and looking for the opportunities where you can join in, even if it is the same size startups or smaller startup, bring in, join the hands together, and really bring in the joint value to the customers with the synergy. That's really where we keep advising a lot of startups. Actually, as I speak, one of our startup is actually going through a technical M&A due diligence at this point of time.
Wow, that's really interesting, Suresh. Now you're saying startups acquiring other startups, and you're going through this process, and it's a common thing. How? How is this? How does this come to light?
Yeah, absolutely. So especially these days, it has become a very common phenomenon where, of course, I mean, mind you, we're not talking about 1 or 2% startups in this scenario, where these are the startups that are probably post-seed, pre-series A kind of, and then they
That's
have
still pretty early.
still pretty early for sure. But then think about this, right? by the time some of these startups are generating revenue, and then there are other smaller startups, let's say 1 or 2 people startups that are there, they created a great technology, they have an IP, but then for whatever reasons, and so many reasons, for the right reasons, they say, you know what, I can't really go on my own to the next level, but I need to join a bigger think tank to really take my vision to the next level, right? And then the idea really is, you don't have to necessarily think about spending millions of dollars for an acquisition, but most of these acquisitions happen more on the equity basis, so that it's not really about the dollar amount that you are exchanging, but it is really the equity that you are exchanging, right? It
So
might
it's
also, yeah,
so so these founders are not necessarily looking to get money up front, but more so if an exit happens, whether it's by another acquisition or IPO.
exactly.
Okay.
So think of it really as, let's say there is a small 2-person startup. They created a technology, and they ran it for about 2 years. And let's say the value of that particular technology is $1 million at this point of time.
Right.
And then there is a $10 million value company, and they've been kicking ass in the startup world. They have 100 customers, and then they are really growing their user base. So now the idea is, if there is a synergy, if there is a white space that the small startup can fill with that big company, the question really becomes, for this 2 people company, should I really build and then spend my next 4 or 5 years to get to the $10 million stage? Or now I really believe in what the other startup is doing, let me go and join hands with them. And by that, the 2 things are happening, right? One, you are actually getting the multiplier effect by joining the startup. That's number
Right.
one. And for the other startup, their valuation is increasing by
Right.
some dollar amount for sure. And thereby, when the bigger startup gets exited or they get fundraised, then definitely, of course, the overall value of the company and then the other founders who joined the startup is also increasing naturally.
Wow, that's really amazing. I love that synergistic effect there. It's just it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. But it's not something I think is commonly spoken about per se. So that's really interesting right there. Now, I wonder though, Suresh, how do you go about helping startups? I know you mentor so many, and you're an active investor. You're engaging with so many different startups, and how do you go about helping everyone in your ecosystem?
Absolutely. Great question. So for us, after 3 different startups, that I've been part of, the question for me really is, should I go start another startup? That is definitely one idea. Or should I enable more startups? That's really the question that I dealt with. And at that point of time, we formed this amazing accelerator, what we call it the Product 10X accelerator. So Product 10X is all about the acceleration using PLG, product-led growth, right? And especially in the enterprise space, we've seen a lot of productivity that has to be increased in every vertical that we see. It doesn't really matter whether we talk about the traditional industries like construction, oil and gas, aerospace, and whatnot, or even the other retail industries like, for example, hospitality, retail, and whatnot. Every industry needs the disruption using the product-led growth. And that's really where, at this point of time, we focus on 4 industries: education technology, HR technology, health technology, as well as productivity and collaboration. So the reason and why we did all this is to say, we've definitely been and seen a lot of accelerators. And what a typical accelerator does is, you give out some percentage, you take in some money, and then you are there with that accelerator program for 3 months or so. And then after that, you are out, right? Of course, there are all these demo days, and then at that point of time, if there is a money that comes in, that comes in. Otherwise, you are out in the wild, and it's really up to you to go and figure out things. That works out for some, for sure, and these accelerators provide a lot of value without a question. But there are hundreds and thousands of startups that may not get to the demo day, or that may not have the funding to the demo day. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad companies, but it is just that they didn't make the cut at that point of time. And for us, what is for me personally, my mission is to be able to help the founders at the right time, at the right stage, so that they don't have to close their doors saying that, oh, you know what, I couldn't really see the tomorrow or end of the tunnel. But we want to help them with the right amount of the idea validation, product market fit, and give them enough contacts in the industry to be able to go out there, do some pilots and all that, and then provide the right talent as well. Because at the end of the day, for startups, it is super important for them to have the right product leaders, technology leaders, business leaders. And that's really where I focus on a lot, in providing that right opportunity for the startups and the founders. And we've seen this, right? When we do that over a long period of time, we typically invest our time for a minimum of 1 year with a startup. And we give them all the mentorship and all the advice and all the expertise that they need on a completely weekly basis, just going with them side by side in the journey. And that has worked out to be extremely beneficial for a lot of these startups, because when you think about the mentorship, many of these companies, many of these accelerators, they actually do the mentorship on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, or you just talk to these startups once in a month. The problem with that kind of approach in the model is you can't really get a lot out of 1 hour of discussion with a mentor, unfortunately, because your challenge is real. It is today, this week, and highly contextualized. And that's exactly what we provide.
Well, Suresh, I'm sure part of delivering a good product or being product focused as a company, or growing by with a solid product, let me say, you in order to know or have a feel of if your product is good, there has to be a process of product market fit, right? And I suppose, how would a founder go about knowing, or how would a founder go about finding product market fit?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I would say, if somebody can figure out that, even for one segment, that's a $1 billion industry, I'm sure. Uh, because at this point of time, this is what happens with all the startups, right? When we start with a big vision, and really going behind every segment that is out there. And then over a period of time, we realize that, oh my goodness, I mean, there is so much that I need to do to reach all these different segments of customer that I have. And then it's a learning process for sure for every startup and founders, to say, initially I started with 10 segments, and then after 3 months, after 6 months, I went to focusing on 2 segments, let's say. So the idea really over there is, you can't really find, or you can't really focus on multiple segments or multiple industries at the same time. You need to find the right amount of signals to be able to see if there is a product market fit, right? And now when I talk about the signals, it's really like saying, are you able to find enough customers that is responding to you? Number one, that's a great signal for you, right? If you are putting out thousands of emails and then not even single customer or prospect is reaching out back, saying that, oh my goodness, that's such a important problem that you guys are solving. I want to know more. Then there is a problem, right? That's the first signal that we need to look into. The second signal is now when you are able to get them to a demo or talk to them or an email, are we providing the right messaging to them, right? You don't want them to come back and say, yeah, I mean, I went through this half an hour discussion that I have, but I still don't know what you guys are doing. Then there is a problem, right? In terms of the messaging. So that's definitely something that we need to look for, which is to say, if the moment you say something and then the customer's like, oh yeah, I get it, I mean, tell me more, I mean, show me your product, then we are there close to that product market fit, right? And now the third thing is really about customers started using the product, and then the customers are using your product on a continuous basis based on your assumptions. Let's say if the intended users are supposed to use your product 1 day every single day, for example, and they are using it, that's a great thing. Or maybe there are some products where it is on a weekly basis the customer should use and they're using it, that's great too. But then let's say if they are not using as you intended, then there is a problem that you need to try to fix. So the product usage is also an indicator for you to see there is a product market fit. The last one that I definitely look for is, especially when you are thinking about the outbound or inbound, your sales calls and whatnot, your sales cycles are reducing at some point of time, right? Initially, it took you maybe a month to close a particular customer, but then the more you are able to bring in the messaging, the references, and then how the customer can use this product, the other customers are getting influenced and the prospects are, it's easy for you to convert the prospects into customers. Then that's a great indication for you to say, yes, I mean, now I'm achieving that product market fit, because effortlessly people are coming to you and effortlessly you are able to sell your product to the customers, and then there is a mutual value that is going on.
Okay. I'm definitely going to have to come back to this recording here and take some notes. Just so much value you're sharing here with us today, Suresh. But I know you're super busy, and it's just been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Now, before getting off, do you have any finishing remarks for our community here?
No, absolutely. First of all, Hugh, I think thanks a lot for providing this opportunity. I had great time chatting. Definitely a lot of insightful questions that we've asked. So thank you for that opportunity. The only thing I say is, for all the founders out there, please be passionate about what you want to build. Keep doing everything, and then there is a lot of opportunity that is coming up in this world, and the world is behind you. Just go for it.